So, hello and welcome to this new edition of our podcast called BeyondCore. I'm Natalie Lamborghini Dumas, and I'm hosting this podcast with my favorite co-host, Matthias Walter.
Hi, Natalie. Hi. Nice to meet you again for a very good conversation. And as I can see, you have brought with you a nice guest.
Yes, we have a very special guest. You will see that, as you know, it's somebody very surprising. So we're welcoming Peter Sandberg, hello, Peter, who's based in Stockholm.
Yes, that's right. Stockholm, Sweden.
Stockholm, Sweden. And so Peter is an innovation strategist at Combient. And so you will explain to us, Peter, in more detail what Combient is, but in a few words, it's a large co-innovation network, and it's encompassing the 38 top multinationals in Scandinavia, right?
True.
And you've also been hosting a Swedish innovation podcast called Spinnovation. And I think also you're a lecturer about innovation at a local university. You can maybe also give us a few words on this later on.
Yes, I'm an occasional guest speaker at conferences more than universities, but yes.
Good. And so the title of today, or the topic of today, is From Ego Innovation to Eco-Innovation, the importance of co-innovation in the era of ecosystems, which is a topic very close to our heart and which Combient is very a master of, I would say. We want to start with since now we've got a video, so it's the first one we're actually doing in video also. So far we were doing the podcasts only recording the voice. Since we've got a video, we can actually show you a picture to introduce Peter.
Okay.
Because we work together with Peter, and what we really learned is that his main passion is all about paintings, and you will be really surprised about the quality of the paintings. So here we go. Nice picture, Peter. Would be good to hear a bit more about you and also about the picture you brought with you.
Thank you for your kind words. And let's start from this this point then, and it's in my day job for the last 10 years. I've been working with innovation in various aspects, you could say. Before I joined Combient, which was 3.5 years ago, I spent 6-7 years at RISE, Research Institute of Sweden. There I was part of building up their innovation office. And also as part of that journey, I then decided to start also the what became the leading podcast on innovation here in Sweden, called Spinnovation. And that podcast was very much a school for myself, because I had during that run I did 80 episodes with the people from various areas of innovation, both from the corporate side as well as from the public side, and it was super educational. But also maybe 8 years ago, I rediscovered my passion for drawing. As a kid, was mainly about comics and visual narrative storytelling. And in my pursuit of that, I started taking online courses and so forth. I got more interested in the fundamentals of drawing, and then I discovered that there is still a thing learning how to paint classically. And that just drew me in. And I tell people it took me 50 years to come up with what I want to do for the next 50 years, which is painting. And I live in the best of worlds, really, in the sense that I have a fantastic day job and a career within innovation. I also have discovered my true passion in life on the private side, which is painting and creating in general, you could say. And I think both those areas, maybe it's not a coincidence. I think they're quite closely related, of course. Each area, innovation as well as painting and art, they have processes and methods, but it's about coming up with something new that people get to, in innovation terms of like they will use, and in art terms they will see. This particular painting, I took it with me into this conversation because it's right in an intersection for myself between my professional life as an innovation strategist and my private life as an artist. And it's called Our Last Innovation. And it's based on a thought experiment from a Swedish philosopher called Nick Boström, who is active in Oxford, England. And his work is about existential risk for humanity. And in one of his thought experiments, he communicates very much his thoughts in terms of stories. And one of these thought experiments is about that we can view the progress of humanity as if we have had access to an innovation goddess. That whenever we need a new innovation, a new type of progress, she just dips her hand into this bowl of innovation and she pulls out a new innovation for us in the form of a marble. And those marbles, they can be either white or gray. The white marble signifies innovations that are purely beneficial, basically no downside, like penicillin, for instance. And then you have the gray marbles, which I think is the majority of innovations, actually. They are sort of like dual edge, dual purpose technologies, like nuclear power, for instance. And through the millennia, sort of like she has pulled those marbles out of this urn. And what he wants to sort of like highlight here is that there's nothing to say that within that urn, that bowl of innovations, there's not a black marble. And the black marble signifies basically our last innovation, the innovation that will actually be an existential threat to humanity, the innovation that will kill us all. And that's a fairly dark picture, but it's also kind of like true. With each and every innovation, we actually also create more dangerous, more powerful technology, and eventually maybe still, you know, even today already, maybe we have some technologies that we are not really, as humankind, sort of like wise enough to really wield. And I'm thinking definitely of nuclear weapons, but also with the rise of AI, there are definitely and a lot of other stuff, like you know, designer viruses or micro drones or whatever. It's so much stuff going on, and we will have powers that is beyond anything that we have ever seen before. And so that's why I really liked his thoughts there, that innovation is, of course, a prerequisite for human development. Even though maybe not everyone is sort of like agreeing with me, I'd say that we live in the best of worlds right now. I don't think there's any time in our past that I'd rather live in than now. I just got so inspired by this story, so I had to sort of like make this painting, and it's quite large actually as well. But and it signifies the importance, but also dangers of innovation. So it's fairly easy to think about innovation just purely something positive, and
True.
we need also to be responsible about what gets innovated, even though it's really hard to, just shut down. Things will probably appear anyways, even if it gets forbidden and so forth. So that's maybe more philosophical start of this conversation.
But I think it's a very good start, and the black marble here, if it represents AI or whatever, is yeah, we can use the podcast to talk about this topic, and why it's also important more and more to co-innovate. I mean, the implications, the impact of an innovation is maybe not just about your own products, your own services, but maybe also about your wider ecosystem you are in, your market, etc. And then maybe sometimes the impact is not fully understandable by a single company, and therefore you need to kind of co-innovate. And that's why we also invited you to talk about this, because with Combient, and like Natalie said, Combient is a network of companies coming together to kind of co-innovate, exchange, etc. So maybe you can start a bit of giving a context about Combient, how Combient works, and what was the reason why Combient exists today.
Yes, I'm happy to do that, and it's Combient started almost 10 years ago. Next year is our 10th anniversary, and Combient is I dare to say unique setup. Even if you look globally, we haven't at least been able to see any kind of setup like this that we know of. And it started with one of the primary investment companies, as well as families here in Sweden, called Wallenberg, and their investment company Investor, that saw within sort of like their portfolio companies, and when we say portfolio companies, basically the big blue chip companies here in Scandinavia, that the rate of change wasn't as high maybe as it could be, and in order to sort of like increase that rate of change, especially on the digital side, as well as the innovation side, they decided to create Combient, which is a formal network, you could say, of these companies. And Combient's task is to facilitate knowledge sharing and experience sharing between the companies, and have them collaborate on joint challenges that they have, even if they come from different industries. And one of the prerequisites to actually join the Combient network is that you're not competing heads on with any other company that is already part of the network. So Combient is quite a, let's say, safe zone then for companies to communicate, because they're not competitors. We are all sort of like under the same NDA, and that NDA is really the secret sauce to Combient's success, because it allows for very honest and transparent discussions around the challenges that you have as an organization. And when you share that with other organizations, they feel your pain, but they maybe have also gone through that themselves, and they have good suggestions and advice on how to meet those challenges.
And
yeah.
And then what kind of innovations do the people do? So, or the companies do? So they come together, they can exchange, okay, best practices, what I learned, etc. But they also come together to co-innovate. And maybe you can give 1-2 examples. What types of innovations? More like a product they develop together, or a service, or completely different business models. So
The companies themselves, Combient and the companies, I think we're just at the beginning of this journey. Even though we have been going on for 10 years, the focus has been more on digital transformation than on pure innovation. Sometimes they touch points for sure. But one of the things that we are aiming to do is to help the companies with working together with coming up with new types of offers or solutions where there are like multiple companies creating something that they one-handedly or singly alone could not create themselves. And that's the biggest potential for co-innovation in a network like this. And that's also, I think, one of the reasons that our paths got crossed. I think it's almost 2 years ago now, because one thing that we have been promoting actively centrally from Combient, you could say, is that there is a big potential around thinking around your, because the members are, many of them are like industrial companies with physical products. If they could add strategies on top of that in terms of innovation as well as business model innovation when it comes to platforms and ecosystems, that's a big untapped potential as well. And almost any type of company have the potential to do that, to move from sort of like physical products and add layers on top of that so that they also have like a platform business, or even maybe build whole ecosystems around something that provides a complete solution to a need the end users have. And that's the what's so exciting about Combient is to try to realize that potential. We have done projects with the companies where they have come up with some really great stellar ideas that they could develop together. But one of the challenges there is that companies today, and this is not just, you know, for the companies in our network, but in general, companies are not set up to do collaboration with other corporate entities in that way. There is, of course, I mean, the business practice of joint ventures and so forth, but they're quite rare, and it's not that many people, you know, within an organization that gets measured on co-innovation or collaboration between corporate entities like that. But I think that's going to change. It will have to be necessary.
You mean from an operational point of view?
Yeah.
That co-thinking is okay, but co-implementing is tougher.
Yeah, it's not that sort of like it's you know, forbidden or a stupid strategy or anything like that. It's not. It's just that they are not set up in that way, so it's easy to make it happen. And also I think that I also host our Open Innovation Forum here. We host several specialist forums within the Combient network, and within that forum, you can see that there is a big shift, sort of like, and this is what open innovation is all about, right? Is to not necessarily develop everything in-house, but if you just know what your challenges are, then you can find them sort of like outside your own company. Sometimes they can be found in other companies within our network, but we also have built what is now a daughter company to Combient, but we maybe name it more as a capability called Foundry, which is for global venture clienting, basically based on challenges, scout the world for the best startups or scale-ups within that area that have solutions that will meet that challenge, and then having a filtering process to present the best companies within those areas to the companies within the network. So in that way, they can much faster get access to solutions that they can start implementing themselves, either internally, organizationally, or production-wise, but also into their product offerings. So that's something that sort of like speeds up the rate of innovation within the companies as well.
Yeah, but it's also part of the journey to go to a full co-innovation kind of mindset, right? So the corporates start learning by doing, but step by step. So what you describe is like a bit also what we experience. So the companies are really trained and optimized on, we call it egocentric innovation. So I can optimize and create new products or new services I sell. But right now in the era of ecosystems and platforms, you need to think more like I'm the orchestrator of a customer journey. And from a customer point of view, the customers have different needs, and I want to integrate solutions, different kind of solutions, my solutions, but also solutions from others into a kind of an integrated journey to fulfill their needs. And this also requires that I maybe take a step back and put myself into the second row and let others shine, but I'm facilitating and orchestrating. And this is really, really difficult for companies because they are, as you said, they are not set up, not by the KPIs, by the measurements, maybe not by the skills, maybe by other governance issues they have, or governance processes they have. They are not really set up for this kind of co-innovation. So this eco-centric instead of ego-centric innovation. And as you described, so this venture clienting means, for our guests, venture clienting means that the corporate partners with a startup, for example, and then the startup has a solution. It's much, much faster in innovating those solutions than the corporate. And then venture clienting means I partner with the startup and give them access to my customer base, for example. And so I can sell the solution of the startup as my solution or as a partnering offering to my customers. So I'm integrating a startup. And so it's a win-win for the startup. So they have access quickly to a mutual customer base, but on the other side, it's also a win for the corporate because they have access to a solution. But it's still, the roles are like, I'm a big corporate and now I'm partner with a small startup. So I'm powerful. So the corporates feel very comfortable in this situation because they are big and powerful and can stay in the role of the, let's say, maybe more dominator. So the question is more, how can corporates move into the new era of eco-centric innovation? So what do you think are the top 2, top 3 kind of bottlenecks, let's say this way, towards this goal? Is it the governance? Is it the KPIs? Is it the skills? What do you think are kind of the bottlenecks at the moment? What holds them back?
I think, and this is not specific for the companies in the Combient network, but this is probably typical for most incumbents, regardless of where you are in the world, and that is that there is kind of like almost like an innovation paradox within companies, large multinationals, and in particular non-founder-led large multinationals. Because we do have sort of like the professional managers that leads those companies. They are stellar managers, but their job is to work with exploiting, you could say, the current business, which means growing it, optimizing it as much as possible. So there's very little incitament and focus on actually exploring, creating new businesses. And so if you want to succeed with innovation within a large company, you need to, you should have the support, or someone from a business unit or business area should actually ask for something and then back it up, and when they get the solution, they will be super happy and start scaling it up. But that leads to sort of like they don't want things that will move the needle, improve the bottom line in 5-6 years. They want something that will move the needle within the next 2 years. So they work usually with much shorter horizons, and in innovation lingo, sort of like horizon 1, maybe into horizon 2. And that leads almost by default also to more incremental innovation. So that coupled with that, also the average lifespan of a CEO is maybe, I don't know, 5 years or shorter on average within large companies. It means also that the average CEO, he or she doesn't really have a good incitament to make sure the company has a big new business in 10 years, because that will probably not be reflected in his or her bonus, and I think that's something many large companies are wrestling with, and some of them, they can find a good balance there. But I think it's much more common to see in companies, and they can be huge, but that are still founder-led. They have a more long-term approach, and they have this capacity, almost like appetite also to build new business, and being a little bit more daring in how they see what will be their next growth market.
So it sounds like it's a lot to do with mindsets and changing mindsets, maybe in the ones that are not founder-led, more so than in the ones that are founder-led.
Mindsets, and probably, implicit or explicit incitaments. Yeah, totally understandable that you don't have the focus on things that will take more than 5 years, because who knows what the world will look like in 5 years, and I will not be the manager of this company anymore, and so forth. Not to say that every manager is short-sighted, far from it. Their job is actually to be far-sighted, and not just dealing with the day-to-day operations, of course. But it's still something that I see as very indicative of non-founder-led large.
And I would like to add to this. Maybe this is also something the CEOs maybe don't really understand, that the speed of innovation they have to put into their work needs to increase, right? Or they need to speed up with the innovation, because it's also this MarTech law. Maybe people know marketing and technology. They also said that the time it requires today for people to adopt to a new technology is much shorter versus what it took for them 50 years ago, whatever. I mean, there are good examples like how much time it required for people to buy or to reach a certain kind of market penetration for a product like a car, or then it was, I don't know, 50 years or whatever, until 80% of the people owning a car. Then maybe when you look at Facebook and code, and it took maybe 5 years or whatever until everybody was subscribed and had an account at Facebook. And now with AI and other things, it takes maybe days until 80% of our population subscribes to the new services. So the time it takes for innovations to become adopted by a lot of people is getting shorter and shorter. So also the time for companies to innovate and to adopt to those new technologies or whatever, increases or decreases, and they need to speed up. So this also means it's not just that it's an innovation which is long term and maybe out of scope of a CEO lifespan, but also a CEO within its 3 to 5 year lifespan needs to focus on innovation. And maybe this also comes back to your painting a bit, to what you showed at the beginning with the black marble and AI. And what we see also with AI is that when ChatGPT launched maybe 1 year ago or 1.5 years ago, and then there was also a bit of half a year later, kind of a stop. Maybe you remember, but they said, okay, now we need to pause, and we need all companies who are working on AI need to come together and think about how can we put in a kind of a security layer, because we see AI has a huge impact, could be maybe the black marble. So how can we control the black marble? How can we control the innovation, though they come together? So could this be also a good example of co-innovation? Also means discussing and thinking about the implications, the impact of new technology, and how can it turn into a positive impact between companies?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack and comment on that and what you just mentioned. I think that it's, even if I led with saying sort of like we live in the best of worlds, I think that for companies it's tougher than ever, in the sense the rate of change is just so high. When I speak about innovation at conferences and stuff, one of my favorite quotes is from this famous CEO for General Electric. Now his name eludes me. Jack Welch. He had this quote that when the rate of change is higher outside the company than inside, then the end is near. And but today, in today's world, there's this acronym called VUCA, and the VUCA world, and it's about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And those 4 areas, they're just sort of like they are just accelerating, it feels like. So your way of predicting things, trying to make sense of what the possible future is really, really hard. And but then again, I think the only way forward is sort of like to be even more proactive and not just reactive, as I think many companies are. And I also think, in a sense, that technological development is super hard, if not impossible, to actually stifle. So even if you were able to bring, for instance, in this AI case, all the companies together agreeing on certain sort of like red lines and being careful and so forth, they will not be able to do that. It's a good way to view sort of like what is happening in those situations is something called Moloch. And Moloch was an ancient, Babylonian god that people sacrificed children, slaves, persons to. And it has come to be a metaphor for a certain mechanism that arises whenever you're acting in a certain context with many stakeholders, and where there's really no coordination, and it's called the Moloch mechanism, you could say. And that is that you get to be part of something and you need to do stuff that actually no one wants to do it, but they have to because everyone else is doing it. Nuclear weapons is one such thing, right? So just because there is the potential for a country to have nuclear weapons, maybe they wouldn't get it, but they do because they know that probably the other countries will get it as well. And that's the situation we have today, right? So some countries feel the need to get nuclear weapons because other countries have them. And you cannot trust the other countries as well, right? That, okay, let's not just get rid of them totally, you know, and handshake on that, you know, we will never use them, and you have nothing to worry about, because there's always the small chance of someone actually going totally rogue and try to dominate the rest of the world through nuclear superiority. So that's why we have this very, very precarious mutual assured destruction mechanism set up, which is crazy in and of itself, I think. But it's and this can also be just on Instagram. An influencer starts to use a beauty filter, and then many other influencers also have to start using beauty filters, because otherwise they cannot really compete. And it's the same with the technology development, and that's why. And even if you start forbidding things, it just means that development will move, you know, into secret labs and stuff like that, financed by governments that maybe don't have any particular scruples, or even if they have scruples, they still feel that, well, we need to do it because the other ones are doing it. So it's a very tough situation, and the only thing we can do and hope and pray for, I guess, is sort of like that it doesn't get totally out of hand, and that we do sort of like try to at least be aware of the potential pitfalls. But I think it's a luxury we don't have, is to actually plan carefully for the development and innovation going on in the world.
From that perspective, Peter, almost seems like co-innovation is the only way, not necessarily to avoid this kind of stuff, because you just explained that it's hardly avoidable, but needs to work together to try and minimize or avoid some pitfalls. Because like Matthias said initially, working in a silo by yourself, you can't solve all those problems anyway. So the only chance you get is to work with others. And
yeah.
then, you know.
Yeah, and I think, of course, we shouldn't confuse sort of like collaboration with co-innovation and so forth, and coordination. But if we go back to co-innovation as such, yes, companies today, they are fairly, since things are happening so fast, but they are also sort of like fairly optimized, very well slimmed down organizations. Some organizations, again, I'm not pointing to our network as such, but sort of like many organizations are also quite anorectic, you could say, sort of like they have really little time and staff to do stuff other than the core business and make sure that works okay. So their ability to innovate sort of like goes down, and the way to still be able to innovate at a rapid clip is to both leverage the power of open innovation, going outside your own company to find the solutions, but also joining forces with other companies to also not just increase the rate of innovation, but actually to come up with completely novel things that cannot be done by any single company in and of itself. And that requires definitely maybe a new mindset. It's not hard to understand that it probably is very beneficial to do that, but it's also it needs a lot of buy-in from all the companies and all the parts of the companies in doing that, because there will be for sure strategic considerations, and also how you fund stuff, and how you try to communicate this to the stock market and so forth. But definitely the end users, regardless if they are like commercial companies, entities, or if it's consumers, the consumers, they are just interested in getting what they need, and they really don't care how someone solves it for them. And it's like if you're going to build a house and you're trying to do all the contracting with all the different companies and expertises and entrepreneurs that is needed to make that happen, it's a hell of a job, right? You just want to get that house, and that's why you usually buy the house from someone that actually is coordinating all of that work that goes on behind the scenes, and that involves many entities. And I think this is something we'll see happening here as well. If you want to grow your business and make your customers happy, you need to collaborate with others in order to do that, and provide new types of services or products that you cannot do yourself alone.
And you mentioned the house. What I also see is that you need, when you want to collaborate with someone and co-innovate with someone, you need a joint narrative. That's why we also call this podcast BeyondCore. I always bring the example, if there would be an alien coming to the Earth, and everything is at risk, right? So every nation would fear, would see the risk of getting, I don't know, destroyed by the aliens. Then the mankind would work together, all the Americans, the Russians, the Chinese, the Asians, the Europeans, they all would work together, find solutions to fight against the alien. So you have a joint narrative. Yes, we need to fight against the aliens. And this kind of joint narrative you need to find to make collaboration really successful. And sometimes you can form the narrative by looking at something positive. Let's take something and let's create something positive out of it. Or the narrative could be fueled by something like a risk, like what I said with the alien, but could be also, oh, we see AI is coming. Let's join forces and think about how can we turn this into something not so impactful. Or companies in the past, in the last 10 to 15 years, they have seen the rise of platforms and the platforms disrupting their value chains. And though they said, okay, we need to maybe join forces with other companies to fight against those dominating platform players in the market. So again, there's a kind of a joint narrative. And I think this forming this overarching narrative to motivate everybody and to bring everybody under the same umbrella and following this narrative. This is so powerful, and is also a skill required, but sometimes not, cannot be done by the company alone. So is there also something you at Combient do to facilitate a bit like that companies come together and find a joint narrative or joint vision they can follow together? Not talking about the solution will follow later, but first create this joint motivation to work together.
Yes, the maybe not the narrative, but the joint vision, for sure, it needs to be there. And having said that, I'm 100% behind you on what you just said, and I think if you ever read Yuval Harari, he says that what sets us apart from any other animal on Earth is that we are storytellers, and that's the way we actually coordinate a lot of activities. And if you think about it, money, even companies, they're just stories. there's nothing real behind there. And so stories and a vision is definitely key to get something done. And it's also the thing that one saying that I've taken to heart is sort of like, it's not about being right, it's about getting right. And what I mean with that is, if I try to convince you of something, Matthias or Natalie, if you don't understand what I'm saying, then I will not be right as such. And it's, even if I am right, so to say, I did not get right in the sense that you guys also understood it and could see that I was right. And this is so important if you work with innovation. If you cannot make other people to realize or to see what you are seeing, then it's impossible to get them on board to sort of like see the world through the glasses that you see, spot the opportunity that you see. And I think the really good innovators, and especially sort of like entrepreneurs, the really stellar entrepreneurs, they had a completely new vision that they were also able to communicate to other people, even though there were many people saying that that's just talking crazy, right? But eventually they got right. And so I believe that's super important, yes.
Yeah, I also think so, that what you described. So when you look at all the major leaders, it's like it starts with Leonardo da Vinci, who could also express himself very good in do very good drawings, so everybody could also understand what he has in mind, how the innovation works. But also like business models, when you look at Jeff Bezos, and he wrote his network effects on a napkin, stuff like that. So you can always kind of start expressing your thoughts and your ideas and your narrative or story. So is this then becoming a key skill for co-innovation, to kind of almost kind of painting and creating this story to bring people together? Is this maybe the major skill you need for successful co-innovation?
I don't think it's particular to Combient or what we try to do here, but the thing is that when you bring companies from so many different industries, it's all about people still in the end, that talks together, that dream together, that co-create together. But then also sort of like when they go back to their own organizations, sort of like the organizations, they have their reality to sort of like relate to, and that governs how they act. So that's also why it's so important to be able to communicate this in a very efficient way and engaging way to sort of like buy into this, so that they actually can do something that normally is also very, very new to them. But I wouldn't say sort of like that's our specific role or anything. I think it just comes with the territory to when we facilitate these this type of processes or discussions, that's something that arises automatically from it.
And then, as you said earlier, it's one thing onboarding everyone, it's another thing executing and actually building. So where do you see, I mean, Combient is 10 years old. Where do you see the next, not 10 years, because we're in a time where 10 years is like science fiction, but maybe in the next couple of years, 3 years, what with regard to co-innovation or ecosystems or venture, corporate venturing, where do you see Combient evolving?
I think that if we let's let's not talk about Combient as sort of like the organization Combient, but rather sort of like the network that Combient consists of. And I think we'll have many more companies representing more different industries coming into the network. They will also be from currently the domination is Swedish and Finnish companies, but I think more from Denmark and Norway will also participate in this network. And who knows, maybe, you know, even some other entities that aligns well with the other participants in the network will join. But the thing is also that if you talk about what if an alien came to Earth, then okay, everyone would join forces. Another way to look at the network as such, regardless if it's Combient or not, but sort of like I sometimes play around with this thought experiment. What would Elon do, you know, if he had this puzzle of currently 38 companies and industries and, you know, with their various expertise and know-how, what new picture could you lay if you combine them into new entities, not necessarily merging the companies, but just taking those skill sets and creating something new from it, right? It's a big and very untapped potential that you could do within a network like this. And that's something that I'd like us to be able maybe to help facilitate going forwards.
Yeah, that's really an interesting way of looking at things, indeed.
Mm.
Maybe sounds a bit idealistic, but
I'd rather frame it as more more entrepreneurial and opportunistic approach, actually.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of a short side story. As you know, I'm a basketball fan, and about
I did not know that.
No.
But I've forgotten about
everybody knows that, Peter.
Okay, sorry.
And about 20 years ago, there was players like Allen Iverson, and they became also very popular because of their playing style, etc. But they also wear some kind of wristbands, and on the wristbands there was always this WWJD, and everybody was wondering what is what WWJD, and every fan wanted to buy this kind of wristband. So I also, as an entrepreneur, said, okay, we have an online shop for basketball clothes, so let's try to find out. And so we searched the internet and everything, and then we found out that WWJD stands for What Would Jesus Do? And it was a wristband sold by the church, right? So he wear that. He has worn that wristband, and as you said, it's more framing like what would Alan
comparing Alan with Jesus.
Or we should maybe create a wristband and saying WWED, what would an entrepreneur do? And then thinking about it, what would an entrepreneur how would it solve it?
It's also sort of like I want to also maybe tie this knot a little bit to add another perspective to this is that it's very interesting in our current educational system that we have, that first of all, creativity gets more or less beaten out of us. So if you there's research on this, so there is a creativity score that in its simplest way can be measured by, you know, in 5 minutes, mention all the things that you could do with a paperclip. And if you ask like a preschool kid, 5 years old, he or she will write down 15, 20. And if you're really extreme, you know, go up to 30 and more. If you ask an adult, they come up with like 2, maybe 3, you know. And if you score that, sort of like have that as a very simple creativity score, it actually correlates perfectly well with how much time you spent in school. And the reason for that is it's not an evil intention or anything, but when you go through school, basically you are encouraged to you get the view that there is just one right answer to every question, instead of actually it's very ambiguous many times, especially when running businesses. And it's also sort of like if you collaborate with someone else, let's say on a test, then it's called cheating. But in the workforce, we actually have to collaborate, and it's not considered cheating. But what I mean is that in terms of companies today, they're very used to do their thing and do it alone, and not being really, involving other companies into it, other than, if they are sub-suppliers or something like that. So I think that's also, if you just open your eyes a little bit and expand your mind a little bit, then you will see that there is so much potential in starting to collaborate with other companies and especially innovate together with them as well.
So it's a good illustration. School, actually, I hadn't thought of that, but in fact, school forces us into linear thinking, where we should really probably change our mindsets into ecosystems thinking, right?
Yeah.
Or we should not go to school, maybe.
What I really like is that maybe also to come to a kind of a conclusion here, because of looking at the time. But I really like your point. Maybe we could stand it like this. So eco-centric innovation is a bit like cheating, and like growth hacking. So come together and cheat a bit, and then find solutions together is easier than alone. So thank you for sharing that. So I think we touched a lot of great points here throughout our conversation. As usual, we ask our guests at the end of a podcast for some recommendations regarding to books, podcasts, blogs. So what is your kind of a good source you would like to of information, of knowledge, of inspiration, or whatever you would like to share with our guests here?
I'll just make one book recommendation that I think really touches upon some of the stuff we've been talking about here, and that is well, actually, maybe I have a couple of more, but so like from a pure innovation perspective, it's Strategizer's book about the invincible company or invincible companies, because it provides such a great framework and also have a lot of practical research and cases around how companies can structure the innovation to sort of like have an equal balance in the sort of like core exploit, traditional, more management-led business, and then explore with coming up with new innovations and finding the next growth trajectories for the company. And I find it highly inspiring and also highly instructional. But then also, I mean, when it comes to innovation, if we go back to this VUCA world with the higher ambiguity, uncertainty, and so forth, I think that a lot of good stuff and ideas, you can find it in science fiction. And there are some really good science fiction that is sort of like pointing us towards a world where a lot of the stuff that we are imagining now could happen, have happened, and what the consequences of that is. So science fiction, and maybe also an encouragement or a statement, and something that we try to do here from Combient is also to get better at foresight. Foresight is not about predicting the future, but see what is possible in future. And I think that that's also the power of within a network that wants to co-innovate. You also do joint foresighting to make sense of what will be possible in the future. And so that's my recommendations.
Thank you very much, Peter. So I hope, so thank you for today, for a start. It's been really interesting. And I think quite a few topics could lead to another podcast, actually, if we dig into some of them. And I hope we're going to see you at our conference in September, on the 18th of September, our B2B platform conference.
Let's hope that, and I want to say thank you to the both of you for inviting me to this this podcast, and I'm looking forward to see you guys much more in the future even.
Yes, and we will also put into the show notes and into the description here in the video the links to your profile and also links to your Instagram account where people can follow you for your paintings. And also the link to the summit in September. And Peter will be also there at the summit and also showcase some of the paintings and the stories behind. I think the stories behind the pictures are more important always, like what we have seen with the black marble. And it creates a kind of
and also I think it will not be just about my art, but sort of like innovation through the eyes of art. I think you can illustrate a lot of the particular aspects of innovation through art, through history, actually.
All right.
Very interesting.
Then thank you again for joining, and thanks everybody for listening and watching, and see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.